So with Assassin's Creed supposedly heading towards Vikings in 2020, it appears as if some people are more reluctant to give that a chance than others, using the usual arguments that Assassin's Creed's run out of ideas and Vikings wouldn't work for it. But you know, I'm personally all for seeing a Viking/Norse Assassin's Creed setting because I believe the complete opposite. I believe that Vikings would work for this game, and not only the franchise, but the direction that the franchise is taking. Before we get into any of that, one thing we can get right out of the way is the argument that Ubisoft is somehow running out of ideas for historical settings for Assassin's Creed games. Do you know how rich history is? Are you stupid? But the whole point of this video is to debunk the whole idea that a Viking/Norse setting is somehow invalid for Assassin's Creed. As just scrolling through the comments, Twitter and Reddit and places like that, I can see that a lot of people aren't buying into it so much. As a disclaimer, Ubisoft has not confirmed that the next Assassin's Creed is going to be Viking oriented. It is just based on rumours and a supposed leak which was corroborated by Kotaku, who are highly reliable in these areas, but without any official confirmation we can't actually say that it's legitimate. But usually when Kotaku speak up it's because they're right. So in order to fathom why I think that a Norse setting would be a great one, we first need to understand why some people might disagree. It's usually the lack of understanding of what Vikings are and Norse history in general. So what exactly is considered to be the Viking period? Well, the earliest recorded raids were in the 790s until the Norman conquest of England in 1066. That's the time period we're working with here. And yes, the Normans who invaded England in 1066 were descended from Vikings, so when saying Vikings it could be anywhere from the late 8th century all the way up to the Battle of Hastings. So there's plenty of history to work with there. And at the same time, Vikings and medieval England, or Anglo-Saxon England, kind of overlap. And that is quite an interesting point in English history, so they could do something with that, as Vikings did actually invade England. And that'll be two settings that they could get out of the way, Vikings and medieval England. And it is quite an interesting point in English history as well, especially towards the end of this period in 1066, what with the Battle of Stamford Bridge and the Battle of Hastings, the former of which is quite often referred to as the end of the Viking period. And as we all know, the end of an era usually bodes well for a bit of storytelling and character development, as shown by Origins, and it's usually in these struggles and shifts of power that Assassins and Templars are likely to be at each other's necks the most, which in itself will provide more opportunities for storytelling. Just as a brief side point, I just realised that Assassin's Creed Odyssey is set before the Brotherhood was founded, in a historical setting that predates the Brotherhood's origin story. If that works for Assassin's Creed, anything will. And think about it, by the time the Vikings are kicking about, the Assassins are already about pillaging, plundering and raping, and essentially expanding their power, of which Templars, for example, would wish to exploit. So in and around this setting there would be plenty for the Brotherhood to do. And so the Viking raids on England, for example, would be an ideal setting for Assassin's Creed, because there's so much going on in the background that you could create an Assassin versus Templar story. At the same time, there's enough blank spots so that Assassin's Creed can tell its own story as opposed to just telling history all over again, which is what, in my opinion, the better Assassin's Creed games do. They don't try to fill in the blanks of history, they don't try to rewrite history, they don't focus too much on the history is just there in the background. The game could overlap with the story when necessary as opposed to just for the hell of it. Onto the atmosphere of such a setting, there's plenty to be had there as well. Norse culture is definitely a rich one, and thus there'll be plenty going on. The style of ambience music that works for these kinds of games could be just point blank gorgeous, and the bloody brutal nature of this time period could also create for a more gritty and down to earth experience than what we've been getting in recent years. An area in which I believe Assassin's Creed could reinvent itself. Now you're probably wondering about one thing, Vikings seem to be quite heavy berserk sort of fighters, so how would stealth factor into this, considering that Assassin's Creed is supposed to be a stealth game? I mean, it's not. It's not by a long chalk, but it's supposed to be. Stealth gameplay can really apply anywhere. There's no historical setting that will negate stealth mechanics. As for Assassin's Creed's current formula, well, it's going down the RPG route, which means it would need a setting that would accommodate an RPG. In this area, Norse mythology, Vikings, and things like that has been used as a base template for a lot of RPGs. Think of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim or Skellige in The Witcher 3. Both use Vikings and Norse mythology as a base template for what they're doing. Both of these games are very successful. And you could argue the successes are down to different qualities, but at the same time, it doesn't harm the quality either. At the same time, you've also got God of War, which also dabbles in quite a bit of Norse mythology, and that's another very successful game. Of course, Assassin's Creed would have to keep it more down to earth than any of these three games. I swear, if I see a giant snake in Assassin's Creed... Oh shit, they already did that. Of course, swap out all these other games' quirks with Assassin's Creed stuff, and I think we could have quite an interesting experience on our hands. And so, it is quite a rich setting to go for, and it's quite a trusted one at this point as well. But in the same light, Assassin's Creed will wind up finding itself being compared to games like God of War, The Witcher 3 and Skyrim, which means that if it really wants to sell, then it's going to have to outdo itself, you'd think. My next point is that a game like this would need a good team at the helm, and I'd imagine it would be Ashraf Ismail and his team working on this, if anybody. And if that does turn out to be the case, then I guess we can trust that this game won't just turn out to be another Odyssey. I mean, I'm not ragging Odyssey. If you like that game, if you do, that's all good for you. But when it comes to Assassin's Creed, it's a bit ridiculous. All in all, I honestly think that a Viking/Norse setting for Assassin's Creed wouldn't be the end of the world, and it would definitely work for the franchise. I mean, honestly, I would have liked a Rome setting beforehand, as that way we would have been able to find out what happened with the ending of the Curse of the Pharaohs expansion for Origins, which was definitely seemingly setting that up. But if it does turn out that when Ubisoft announces the next Assassin's Creed game, it's apparently going to be Viking oriented and not going to Rome, well, I wouldn't be mad at that. So to summarise all the points that I've just made, I think that a Viking Assassin's Creed would make for some interesting historical stuff. It would be the perfect placement for some Assassin Templar struggle. It would have a great atmosphere. It would have the perfect environment to reinvent Assassin's Creed. It would work as a setting for an RPG. And if this game does exist, then it is a job for our boy in the hot seat. And as a final point, it would make for an interesting change in tone and atmosphere to Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Origins, for example. So yes, I think that Vikings and a Norse setting in general would make for a very interesting Assassin's Creed title. Throw in Anglo-Saxon England and you've got yourself quite the dramatic setting on your hands. If you're still not convinced, go and watch all 3 seasons of The Last Kingdom on Netflix. It's a solid experience, trust me. Even if you come out of it completely unconvinced that it would work for Assassin's Creed, you'd have a good time. Unless you don't, and then I really don't know. So there you go, that is why I think that a Viking Assassin's Creed would definitely work for the franchise, and isn't an example of Ubisoft running out of ideas. In fact, I think running out of ideas for historical settings in which to place Assassin's Creed games is the only thing that Ubisoft shouldn't be worrying about with Assassin's Creed. Regardless, let me know what you think down in the comment section. Do you think Vikings would work for Assassin's Creed? Do you not? Let me know why. Also, let me know if I've managed to sway your opinion. As a final disclaimer, a Viking Assassin's Creed is not confirmed officially by Ubisoft, and thus everything should be taken with a pinch of salt. And so this is light speculation and nothing more. Anyways, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff, and I'll see you all very soon with another video at some point.